My name is Naoíse Mac Sweeney and I'm a Professor of Greek Archaeology. Welcome to my exp. We in the modern West still look back to ancient Greece as our imagined origin. We tend to think of the roots of Western culture, Western civilization, reaching back through time and ultimately being located in the ancient world of classical Greece. We still make movies and TV programs about the Greek world. We still write best-selling popular novels set in the ancient Greek world or that retell the ancient Greek myths. We're still obsessed with ancient Greece. The reason for this continued obsession with ancient Greece is that we believe that our modern Western civilization and culture stems directly from the Greek world. We believe that Western civilization began, it had its origins, its birth in classical Greece, that this kernel of civilization was transmitted through time, through Rome, through medieval Europe, through kind of the Renaissance and the Enlightenment, and ultimately to the world of the modern West. This imagined genealogy of Western civilization begins in ancient Greece and ends with us, the modern West today. And I think this is why we are ultimately still so interested in the classical world. So as a researcher specializing in the study of the ancient Greek world, it's very clear that there are some things wrong with this picture. First of all, the ancient Greek world is nothing like our vision of the modern West. The ancient Greek world was spread across 3 different continents. It was partly located in Europe, but it was also partly located in Africa. And for the most part, actually, much of the ancient Greek world was located in the modern continent of Asia. So when we think of the modern West, we often think of it as a European and North American geographical construct, and yet the ancient Greek world was much more Asian than it was European, and it was certainly as African as it was European as well. So this is quite different from the expectations that we might have. Another problem is the assumption that we in the modern West are the privileged heirs of classical antiquity, that we have received a pristine inheritance, a cultural inheritance from the Greeks through the Romans, and that this is the cornerstone of our own civilization today. When we look at what happened in antiquity, actually, the heirs of antiquity are not exclusively or even predominantly in Europe. What we actually find is that the inheritance of classical antiquity is much more distributed than we might initially assume. Greek culture and civilization has left its imprint on many different societies around the world, not just Western culture and society. The heritage of ancient Greek culture can be clearly seen in the Byzantine and the Eastern Orthodox tradition. It's also very evident in the traditions of medieval Islam and especially the scientific traditions that emerged out of that. Elements of ancient Greek culture and civilization also persisted and survived in Central Asia as far east as modern-day Pakistan and Afghanistan as well. So if we map the heirs of ancient Greek culture and civilization, we find that they are not exclusively located in Europe or the modern West at all. In fact, we have Asian, African, European and North American heirs of classical civilization. The process of claiming Greek inheritance and the legacy of the classical past, this is something that happened very gradually over the period of several centuries. In the early medieval period, much of Central and Western Europe is actually seeking to distance itself from Greek antiquity. This is because of the close association of the classical Greek past with the Byzantine present and the traditions of Eastern Christianity that were associated with them. So in the early medieval period and right up until the time of the Crusades, the opposition is very much between the Latin West and the Greek East, and so therefore Greek antiquity is almost tainted by association. It's not until later, during the Renaissance, that elements of Greek antiquity become more integrated with that Central and Western European tradition. This happens after the fall of the Byzantine Empire and after the rise of the Ottoman Turkish Empire. And this is certainly partly a response to that. So the civilizational lines are no longer between the Latin West and the Greek East, but between the Greco-Latin West and the Islamic East. However, even these civilizational lines are quite complex and messy for several centuries, and it's not really until the turn of the 17th century that we start to find them really crystallizing. And it's at this point that we have a rhetoric of a unified Christendom which brings together the various traditions of Western Latin Christianity, combining Catholicism and various forms of Protestantism in opposition to the Ottoman Muslim Turkish world. This really emerges out of the rivalry between the Ottoman Empire and the various Habsburg realms. The mid to late 16th century is really a period of intense rivalry between the Ottoman Empire and the various Habsburg realms, with several major battles, both land and sea battles, between these two global empires. In this context, we have a rhetoric of increasing opposition between Christendom and Islam, and a rhetoric that also projects that clash of civilizations narrative back into history as well and into antiquity. In the context of this rhetoric, we begin to hear of a unified line of Europe on the one side, which starts with the Habsburg and stretches back through Rome and Greece, because these are European ancient powers, and that becomes more and more distinct from the Ottoman line, which stretches back through an Asian antiquity, through the Trojans, and back to the Persians and the Medes. And so we have this growing sense of distinction of Europe and Asia, Christendom and Islam, not just in the present of the late 16th century, but also in the past as well. The classical worlds of antiquity become separated into European and Asian antiquity, just as the contemporary worlds of Europe and Asia were also becoming further and further apart. So I wrote in my book that ancient Greece as the origin myth of the modern West is an origin myth which no longer serves us in the present. We know now that we are not descended in any straightforward or linear way from the ancient Greeks, neither biologically, nor culturally, nor civilizationally. But actually that doesn't matter, and it shouldn't matter. I think in the modern West we need a new origin myth which allows for rupture, which allows for choice, which allows for diversity. I think the modern West can still look to ancient Greece for inspiration and for its roots, but actually we need to look back to an ancient Greek world that was diverse, that was geographically dispersed, that was comprised of many interacting individual groups that came together in a form of cultural convergence. If we see the ancient Greek world as it really was, a world that was forged through cultural interconnections, through cultural convergence, through diverse peoples coming together, this actually is a foundation myth which I think we can all draw inspiration from today. This would be an origin myth which is much more suited to the modern West as it is today.